Today we're going to talk about GDPR. Oh, and happy GDPR Eve, by the way. Yay! All right. So I'll just give you a little, just in case you think I'm from Dream, because I registered for this about a year ago, and so since then, I'm at Nobu. Most of you probably know Nobu. We're known for our restaurants. We have 39 restaurants worldwide. Probably by the end of this year, we're probably gonna add another 5 more. We have hotels as well, which a lot of people don't realize that. We have 16 operating hotels. We are, probably by end of 2019, we'll have 20 in total. So if you haven't been to Nobu, you should, and they don't require you to eat rice. So these are my bosses. I just thought you wanted to know. These are the people I report to. They have a lot of fun. So I've been in the travel industry for about 18 years. Did 2 startups, sold them. I work for a bunch of companies. A lot of people think that my job is fun, but it really isn't. As you can see, it's mostly lots of coffee and a lot of data. And probably why I've been chosen to do this GDPR session is because I've done it twice. I've done it at Dream before I left. And then when I came to Nobu, I had to do it again. So I guess I'm a little bit of an expert, having to do it twice for like a span of 2 years. That's GDPR. So what is GDPR? It's data protection regulation, right? So about a year ago, the European, they formed this committee, this privacy committee, and to set stricter rules and regulations to protect their citizen. And in the course of this year, they gave us this deadline, which is tomorrow, by the way, to be compliant and up to standard to their laws. And it has, since then, it has expanded to protecting non-Europeans if the data is being collected in Europe. So it's not just about Europeans anymore, right? So it's not just about if your European customer is at your store, at your restaurant, on your plane, and so forth, but it's also us Americans. If we travel abroad to Europe and they collect our data, we also be protected as well. So that's definitely an expansion of the law since it was first introduced. And what the law really requires is that you have to show accurate measurements to demonstrate that you are collecting the right data, that you're storing it, that you are protecting the privacy of your clients and guests, and that you give as much transparency about the data that you collect to your customer and guests. So you give the power to the people that you're collecting, the rights to review, to edit, to delete, to request, how you use this data, how you share it, and how you store it. And here in the U.S., I mean, we have protection agencies and laws, but what makes this a powerful law is that it expands beyond the personal data that we're familiar with, like the names, the phone numbers, the birthdays. Now it also covers data that can indirectly identify you, like your IP address, cookies, special rates like hotels. We like to target people who book at a certain rate. Well, if it can indirectly sort of points you as the individual of your demographics, how much you make, stuff like that, then that is protected under this law as well. So what happens if you comply? I get asked this a lot by our GMs and owner, Well, the minimum penalty would be 2% of your gross income or 10 million euros, and the maximum, if they fine you, it would be 4% of your gross revenue. So that's a lot. That's a lot of money. So there are certain ways that companies become compliant or get themselves into compliancy, and these are all the things you should have already done because today's the eve of. So obviously awareness. So not only should your leadership team know about GDPR, but your operations, anybody who actually deals with data should be aware of the law, the clauses, what is expected, and the ramification. Also, knowing where you store them, knowing that you have consent for collecting the data is important, how it's viewed, how it's collected, how it's stored, how it's shared, all that is important. Privacy policy, of course, giving the public the transparency of how you govern their data and how you govern their privacy. So definitely all the policies and statements around that is important. And providing the rights to everyone you collect data from. So again, they have the rights to ask to review it, they have the rights to delete it, they have the rights to object to certain functions that you do with their data, whether it's sharing, storing, or even the duration of the storage. Sorry about my PowerPoint. If they request to do anything with their data, you have to provide 1 month. I mean, you have a maximum of 1 month to give an answer. Obviously, there are certain reasons as to why you can't comply to a request. So even though this law protects pretty much everyone, but your local law actually supersedes this law. So for instance, I believe in Spain, in our hotels, we have to make a Xerox copy of people's passport, and we have to actually send it to the police station, and they store it there. So if, let's say, someone comes and say, well, I need every piece of information you have of me since I stayed in your Barcelona property, well, the law in Barcelona says, well, I can't, the police officers and the police stations do not return the data that they collect from you. So I can delete on my end at the hotel, but I cannot request the government to give you back the data that I sent them. So whatever the local law is, they do supersede the GDPR law. Prior to GDPR, and even I'm guilty of this, a lot of times I collect data for the sake of collecting because I don't know if I'll use it later on, and I don't want to miss out. If I all of a sudden next year realize that there is a piece of data that I should have collected last year and I didn't, I would have missed out on all those data. So I'm like, I'm just going to collect everything I have. Whatever you want to give me, I'm just going to put it somewhere. Well, this law states that you can only collect if it's to better your business or better the service of your client. So you can't just collect for the sake of collecting. If there's no need to collect my birthday, you can't collect it. Obviously, consent, we all know this, although most of us don't practice it sometimes, but it's mandatory. And one thing that's that it's mandatory is that a lot of the practice where they have pre-check boxes, this law states that you can't help people pre-check. They manually have to action it if they want to be consented. Children, so social media is under me as well. So this affects children, teenagers under 16. So I'm not too sure how it's going to affect all those teenagers on their phone. But basically what this law says that you can't collect share information, data on any individual that are 16 years and younger. Without the consent of an adult, of course. Breach, if there's a data breach, if there's a theft, you have 72 hours. So that's not a whole lot. That's not a whole lot to report to the government that, and the public that, oops, your data's been breached, it's been stolen by someone. Every company should have a data protection officer. So basically, this is the person that's going to help govern, to make sure that your entire company and all your hotels on our part is compliant. Someone that they can turn to. If the EU decides to complain, they have a point person at the corporate office that's going to respond. But you also need a EU representative. So we don't have an office in the EU. So if you don't have an office in the EU, or even if you don't have a hotel or a travel agency or whatnot in the EU, you do need an EU representative, even if you have a DPO. And the reason for it is because it is a European law, so they need someone local, they need a local person that's there to address any EU issues. And of course, being that we have 16 hotels, 39 restaurants, going on 20 hotels, whatever procedures, policies, and statements you put out there, it should be aligned. It is harder for us because we don't own every hotel. We work with different investors, different owners, so trying to get that alignment sometimes is difficult, but it is a must. So obviously you need an email that can communicate with the public so that if a guest complains, if a client's complained, they have someone and an email dedicated to it. And so at Nobu, we created a task force. So basically, we obviously have a DPO, a Europe rep, and then all the different departments because it does involve every piece, every aspect of our business. And we created, as a corporate office, we created about 18 documents. In those documents, there's corporate-wide policies, statements, procedures, letters, addendums. So we hand all these out to all our hotels, restaurants, and spas. And so we adopted the three-stage approach. So the first approach, obviously, is we created all these policies, templates, and documents at the corporate office. Then we shared it with all the hotels, all the restaurants, all the spas, and they take the template that we've created and customize it to each of their operations. Because each hotels have different owners, different investors, different countries, different technology. It has to be customized to make sure that it is applicable to that location. And then the second phase is after you have all these public-facing document done, you have to now establish standard procedures and processes because it's great, you're telling the world this is what you're collecting, this is why you're collecting, this is where you're storing it, this is who you're sharing it with. But if someone were to complain or ask questions, you need to know how to proceed and how to retrieve these data. You need to know where all the technology pipes are going and where everything, and who's handling it. So step 2, before tomorrow ends, is to create an internal document. And our lawyers, our group of lawyers in New York says that as long as before May 25th, you can demonstrate to the European Privacy Committee that you are making progress and as much steps in towards compliancy, they will not fine you. So no one's going to knock on your door on the 26th and say, hey, I just noticed that you didn't have this, you didn't have that. As long as you can prove that you have been making the steps towards compliancy, you're fine. So therefore, we were not too worried about having third step be done by tomorrow because what was most important was having the procedures and having the public communications out before tomorrow, but everything else, we gave our deadline to the 8th. So basically, by the 8th, we we're going to have a third-party audit, because that's a requirement. You have to have somebody outside your company who can be objective to audit your systems and your processes in place, and then also train and educate your staff. So that's what we do under step 3. So how does this all impact customer service? Because yesterday my phone was blowing up because a lot of my colleagues were very upset about this GDPR. They fear that our 2 million profile database is going to go down to 2 as of so I took it a different look. I mean, I don't see it as a bad thing. I really do see it as a good thing. I think that it helps give us transparency, and it educates the public. So having a cookie notice, I think, helps people understanding what it is that we track. I think takes out the fear. We give the users and our guests the option to choose, to accept or refuse our tracking methods. And even if they refuse, the law says you have to give them the rights to use. So you'll have to have some sort of technology in the back that says, okay, you don't want to be tracked, but I still have to let you use my website. So I think it's great to give our guests and our clients that sort of confidence, that sort of control back of their own data. It also internally, it helps us break down the company. I think many companies have siloed departments. We have lots of data about the same person, about the same thing, but we don't share. And this makes us be more, I think, consumer-centric. It helps us think of the customer first and not of ourselves. It helps us and it forces us to improve our data protection and security. I think a lot of companies are kind of cheaping out on that. A lot of companies are not worrying about it until they get spammed or until they get a notice or theft. So I think this really puts it in the forefront for people to be more proactive. And it strengthens, obviously, the relationship that we have with our guests and our clients and our customers. And prior to tomorrow, if you think about data, it's just big data. We collect everything, and now we're over data. We don't really know if we need it. We don't know what they are. We don't know. What is really helping us is turning those data into smarter data. It's really giving us more definition of the data. It's helping us look at the entire journey, the entire lifetime of a customer versus in silo, where marketing looks at one thing, operations look at another, and sales. And also, it helps us educate the public and ourselves the benefit of data, because I think public has a misconception of why we collect certain things, and then internally, of course, we also over-collect sometimes and not know why we collect, but we do. Obviously, it helps us better our business, better our client experience, better the relationship. So if you think about how many people are ready, I got some funny stats. So, and this is from yesterday, by the way. So 60% of all tech companies are still not very ready. They might be 40% ready, but they're not fully ready based on what is required by tomorrow. One out of 3 companies are not ready. So this is all within like a day. And it got cut off, but as of last night, 44% of the people still have never heard of GDPR, don't know what it is. So if you look at the world in Europe, as of the 21st, that was Monday, 63% of the US companies are ready for tomorrow, 54 in Spain, 51 in Germany. UK is great, hooray to UK, 70%, Sweden 31, and Netherlands 50. This is my closing slide. So, there you go. May 2016, that's what we look like. And as of tomorrow, that's going to be us. That's it. Oh. I'm time, right?
Thank you, Brigitte. Let's go for the question.
Who's got no questions?
For audience. So I think audience has a lot of questions about GDPR. I'll allow them to ask. So, questions?
So I'm from Reagan and Dulles Airport. So our operations are entirely in the U.S. However, we have a large percentage of people logging into our website from the European Union. I'm wondering, and I'll have to say, I'm pretty sure we're probably one of those who are not ready if this applies to us, but I'll check with our CIO. But does this apply to us? Do we have to do something different than what we have been doing because folks are logging in from the EU?
Yeah, I mean, yes, especially the airport. Absolutely. I mean, if you are collecting data from travelers that's coming through, like I think we knew about the bathroom app, right? Yes, absolutely. You do need to protect the travelers that are coming through, even if you're not collecting direct data. So even if you don't know me as my name, even though you don't know me from my birthdays and emails, but if there's indirect data like where I came from, the flight I took, the seat I was on, my IP address when I used your Wi-Fi, those are protected. Yeah. Sorry.
Hello. Can you explain the difference between what PII is along with GDPR?
What's the difference?
Yeah, like how does it come into play or does it?
Oh, of course, yes. I mean, it definitely more strict in terms of what the PII laws requires today. I mean, I think the fact that, especially here, at Nobu, we have. And we were talking about technology stacks. Every hotel probably works with 20 plus different technology companies, right? So 15 to 20. So if you add that times 16, and me as an e-commerce person, I try to collect as much transactional data as possible. So credit cards, phone numbers, social security and all that. I think that certainly this law has helped us relook at those PI compliance. It really, we always thought that by having a safe website, by having a secure booking engine, that all that is fine. But we haven't really until now really looked at exactly what we have been collecting, how we have been storing, how we have been sharing. So it actually have reworked our entire, it resulted in an extra 9-page addendum, for one. It also involved an extra IT person to relook and rewire and make sure that operations and systems are connecting in the way that it's compliant.
Hi, thank you so much, Liliana Petrova, JetBlue. I just caught on the children's comment because I'm not sure how to execute that. What a parent gets to opt in for a child? Is this like how do I even go about that? Thank you.
How do you opt in a child?
So if I have a group of a family, right, and they're traveling and let's say I do facial recognition and I want them to opt in according to the GDPR rules. Usually we would go with email or a phone or a push notification. So does that mean that now somehow I have to know if that customer has a child? And if they have a child, send two to one for the person, one for their child? I'm just kind of thinking in my head about how do we execute this thing?
Yeah, so when it comes to, sounds better. When it comes to children, not that you cannot collect their information, it's just that you need the consent of an adult. So that could be their guardian, that could be their parents. So you can still collect their information, but what I have seen at our hotel level, we try to go the extra mile, right? We see a parent coming to stay with our hotel, and they have a child. We're like, oh, let's do something nice for him or her. Then we just automatically says, oh, what's your name, oh, why are you here for? And then we're trying to collect all this information about this child that we just met, and we recorded it because now we thought, okay, the next time this child comes back, we'll remember everything about them. We can't do that anymore. Even if the intent is good, you can't. You'll probably have to turn to the parents like, can I speak to your child and collect some information so we can do something special? If the parent says yes, then you can collect the information. If the parent says no, then you cannot collect nor store the information. And especially from a hotel, we write all our notes in our property management system. So there are fields where it's for internal use only. So even if, right now, if I show you your profile on my property management system, it won't show you the private notes between colleagues, but under the GDPR, everything has to be shown. So even internal notes. And I know in my brain, sometimes there's a guest that comes into the hotel quite often, but I can't remember his name. So I would put notes like, tall guy, funny hair, weird, big ears with a little girl or stuff like that. All that must be shown. So you can't store any, so when it comes to children, you cannot store, not even internal staff comments. Because everything has to be transparent.
Okay. Thank you, Brigitte.
Thank
you
you.
so much.